Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Before we get into it, I wanted to let you know that there is a very noticeable audio change that happens between the first tip and the second tip. And I know that it's there. The reason it happened was because I was sitting at our dining room table recording the first half of this episode, and then my kids came home, so I had to go up to our bedroom to finish recording the episode. So I know that it's there. It's very significant. We're just going to roll with it because this is what we do here. And I just wanted to let you know. So thank you for giving me grace on that. So with that, let's get into today's episode. Hey there, and welcome to the Digital Nomad Family Podcast. This is the place where families who have or want to have a nomadic lifestyle come together to talk about the highs and lows that this life brings. We celebrate the joys and support each other in the hard. So, if you are a digital nomad family or will be in the future, this is the place for you. We're glad you're here. Hey guys, welcome back to another Digital Nomad Family Podcast. My name is Marissa, and if this is your first time listening, thank you so much. I hope that you find some value here. I hope that you enjoy it. I hope you're not bored. All the things that you want when people are spending some time listening to your voice. So today's episode, also, I'm really bad at just kind of jumping in and then jumping out. So before we get to today's episode topic, which is, I think, going to be helpful. This is something that I think if I would have had a podcast like this before I entered language school in San Jose, it wouldn't have changed my mind about going. I have zero regrets about going, but I do think it would have been helpful to make the decision. And I think I would have gone in, I think all six of us would have gone in a lot clearer about what that time was going to look like and just everything. And so this episode is all about just maximizing learning a new skill, maximizing what you do, maximizing how you do it. Just if you are going somewhere to learn a new skill, here are my 7 tips to help you in that season. And we'll get into that in a minute. But first, I wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who's been listening lately. We've had quite a spike in numbers, which is always fun. However, we haven't had a spike in 2 things. And the first one being subscribers. So if you are listening to the podcast, I see the numbers going up. I really appreciate it. If you could hit that subscribe, that follow, the plus, whatever you are listening on, if you could go ahead and give the show a follow, that would be really great. And I don't say that for my own self-confidence or whatever. I'm very secure in who I am. It helps other people find the show, because how the algorithms work is if they see that people are following the show, then they see, oh, people are active over here. It's the same way as like with Google. You want to do stuff on your Google profile to let Google know that kind of like someone is coming in and putting the lights on of a company, of a business. Google podcast rate followers do the same thing to the algorithms on iTunes, on Spotify, on all the platforms. The more reviews a podcast gets, then it's like the algorithm is saying, oh, people are coming here, it's still active. So that would be really, really great if you could give it a follow. The next thing is, if you've listened to, I would say, at least 2 episodes, please go ahead and leave a rating or a review. I talk about this at the end of the podcast a lot, and sometimes people just don't get to the end, or by the time you do get to the end, you've zoned out. So I'm just going to talk about it here. Leaving a rating and a review, that does so much to help other people find the show, because when people are trying to figure out, will this show be helpful to me, ratings and reviews show them, hey, the host is a good host, the content is valuable, you're not going to waste your time listening to this. So just think about how many times you have personally used a review in your life, whether it's a podcast review, whether it's a recipe review, whether it's an Amazon product review, a hotel review, an Airbnb review, doesn't matter. We all have used reviews to help us make decisions. And so if you could just go and leave a rating or a review, that would be wonderful. Even if you just leave a 5-star rating and you don't leave a review, that's fine. If you leave like a full-on review, that's wonderful because that does help people. But even just going and leaving a star rating is wonderful. And by star, I mean 5 stars, of course, because we're worthy of it. So now that that is done, let's get into today's topic. And we're just gonna talk quickly about what it looks like to learn a skill while you're traveling. And then I'm gonna give you 7 tips for how to maximize learning that skill while you're traveling. So some people might say, what are you talking about trying to learn a skill while you're traveling? This is different than just like maybe when you're at your house, you're trying to learn how to make a certain dessert, right? You're like, oh, like I saw someone make this, I want to learn how to make it. And then you go to the store, you buy it, you get the stuff back to your house, and then now you have several attempts of trying to make this dessert, okay? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the self-teaching stuff that we all do at our homes. Like we all have little things that we're like, oh, I'd really like to learn this. This is very much I am going to have some type of teacher and I am going to actively be participating in learning a skill, not just watching some YouTube videos, not just listening to some podcasts. I'm going here because this is where I want to go to learn a skill. And so for my family, we have just exited a series or a season where this happened. So we went to San Jose, Costa Rica for me to learn Spanish. And it was such a good decision for our family. And I'm so, so glad we did it because I entered the Spanish school, knowing hardly any Spanish, and now I can have mediocre conversations. I'm not fluent by any means, but I'm definitely a lot more comfortable with the language than I am, and that's really good. So now I have a very solid base on which I can just continue the education because I spent so long learning from teachers. So that's our family's experience with this. But it doesn't have to be a language. There's so many languages that you can learn. And I do think it's a good idea to learn a language from someone that speaks that language fluently. I don't think you have to go to the country. Let's say you are in a season where you're living a rooted life, but you're like, I really want to learn German. Okay, I don't think you have to go to Germany to learn German, but I would encourage you to find someone that speaks fluent German, and even someone that has spent time in the culture, because language and culture are very deeply connected, very, very deeply. And so if you can find someone that has spent time in the German culture and then they're teaching you, I would encourage that. I don't think you have to do what we did and live there just to learn that language. But I would say learn it from someone that is a fluent speaker and at least has, if they're not native to that country, at least has spent time in that country, just so you can get that language culture connection. So that's for us. But skill learning doesn't have to be just a language. So let's just go over a few examples. And also, I love to do this kind of stuff because I think it kind of gives people permission to think about a skill maybe they want to learn that maybe they haven't thought about, or they haven't like allowed themselves to daydream about it. So let's just go and have some fun of things you can learn. So one is any type of cooking. There are so many things that you can go and learn how to cook. We took only one, it was just an afternoon cooking class in Martin and Stoyanka's birth country. So if you haven't heard the tale of my family, we have 4 kids, 2 adopted, 2 biological, and 2 of our kids were adopted internationally, but we don't share their birth country. online, just out of respect of it's their story to tell. But while we were in their birth country, we did a cooking class to learn how to make some local food. So that way I could make it for them and they didn't lose touch entirely, just immediately, with that food culture. Now, there's so many caveats to throw in here about learning to make a food, learning how to make a certain type of food, especially when you're learning how to make it in that country. So the ingredients that go into a dish, let's say you're in Italy and you're taking Italian cooking classes. When you leave Italy, the ingredients that you're able to purchase will be different. And I feel like that kind of goes without saying, but sometimes we don't think about it, right? And so the food that I learned how to make in their birth country, it wasn't a one-to-one perfect translation when we got back to the United States, which is where we are from. It was, hey, here's the idea of the food. Now I'm going to do my best to replicate it here with what I have available to me. So just keep that in mind if you are doing any type of cooking or baking, that yes, you are learning the skills, and depending on how far you go into your lessons with it, you will very easily be able to replicate it in another country. You'll find ways to make it work, and that's great. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there when it comes to cooking or baking. But there are so many amazing cooking and baking classes around the world. And if you have a favorite type of food and you're like, I want to learn how to make this food more, I want to eat it more, I want to enjoy it better, go to the source. We love the show Somebody Feed Phil. And that's what Phil says in his episodes. I know for sure he said it, I think, in the Mexico City one. And I don't know if he has said it in anymore, but it really stuck with me. Like, if you like a food, go to the source. So if you want to learn how to make Mexican food, go to Mexico. If you want to learn how to make Italian food, go to Italy. If you want to learn how to make any type of Asian food, go to that country, right? If you want to learn how to make pho, you're going to go to Vietnam probably. So just go to the source and just have so much fun learning how to make it. Just be aware that after you leave that country, you are going to probably have to do some adaptations to it in whatever country you're in next. But the same is true with a language. So I learned Spanish in Costa Rica. Now we're in Argentina and the Spanish is different. The accent is different. Certain words are different. The rhythm is different. And that's okay, right? You adapt to where you are. And I think that's something that full-time travelers are actually really thrive in, is that adaptation. So just keep that in mind. Another example of a skill you can learn is any type of art. So we talked about Ebru in the previous episode. If you didn't listen to that, go ahead and go check it out. You can learn what Ebru is. It's a type of art. So you can learn any type of art in the world. You can learn glass blowing, you can learn sketching, you can learn painting. There are so many varieties of art, and it would be so fantastic to, if you or someone in your family was an artist, to go to a place and really dive in and study it and learn that skill in that country. So some examples of this are, you could go to France and go to Paris, and there are amazing art schools in Paris that even have classes for younger kids. If you have a younger kid that wanted to do some art, there's also amazing art schools in Italy. Think Renaissance. It has a pretty strong art history there. Italy does. And so just amazing places all over the world that you can learn art. There's also different types of art, like glass blowing, tile making. There's just art is such a huge silk. You can do things with silk. That is an art form. So many different things you can do in the art world. And I would encourage, if we have one of our daughters, Riley, she loves art, and she is very much looking forward to being in a physical art school again. She was in one in the United States, and then she transitioned to online classes for just a teeny tiny bit. She didn't love the online aspect of art classes, so she is very much looking forward to getting to an English-speaking country and being in art classes again. So that is so such a wonderful skill to learn. And then you can learn a sport or a game. And so some examples that I was thinking of was if you want to learn how to play rugby, well, you can go to New Zealand, and then you can join a rugby club. You can learn how to play it, get experience playing it, and that's great. You can go to India and learn how to play chess, which is India is the birthplace of chess. Or let's say you want to learn how to fly fish. I learned in researching for this episode that Slovenia has wonderful fly fishing. How fun would it be to go, hey, we're going to go spend 3 months in Slovenia and we're all going to learn how to fly fish? Yes, please. Like, amazing cost of living, amazing people. I love Eastern Europe, so I think it's amazing people. Pretty good food, gorgeous landscapes. Yeah, let's like cheap. Let's go to Slovenia and fly fish for 3 months. And then we have a skill. We have all these wonderful things. So that's another example. Getting scuba certified. So getting certified in scuba is a very big thing, I think, for a lot of travelers, because there are just so many places around the world that you can scuba. Scuba is not something I see myself doing. However, when we were in Istanbul, we learned that Cairo, Egypt is an amazing place to get certified in scuba, because it has like the water there is really great. And it's just, I never would have thought Egypt to be a place where I would go to get scuba certified, but maybe I would do scuba in Egypt. But that would be an amazing skill. And to do it at a destination, not only does it give you the skill, it also gives you that experience of being in that country and living there for a while you're getting scuba certified. And then another just skill idea that I had in mind was learning about wine or whiskey. So if you or someone in your family is really interested in this, well, go to Italy, or an amazing place in Argentina that has great wine is called Mendoza. And you can go to Mendoza, you can go to Tuscany, and you can learn all about wine. And you can just immerse yourself in that culture and learning about it. Or if you really like whiskey, think about going to Scotland and learning all about whiskey for a while and just be like, hey, for a few months, for 2 months, whatever, I really want to just learn about whiskey. Like, that could be fun, right? So this is what I would say. Think about a skill you want to learn. And again, not just something where you can watch some YouTube videos and that's it, but a genuine skill that you're like, I would love to have a teacher for this thing. Find out if there is an origin to that. Like, where did it begin? And if it has one, I would recommend going there. If it doesn't, something like fly fishing, for example, I would say go anywhere where the fly fishing is going to be good during that season. So find out when fly fishing season is and go there then. So it does take a little bit of research, obviously, but totally worth it. So now that we're all on the same page about what we mean when we say a skill, that it's this thing that you're going to sit under the teaching of somebody else for a while, let's jump into my 7 tips of how you can capitalize on it, okay? And again, I say this as someone who we've just recently exited a period of very intense skill learning. So number 1 is set your expectations well. And what I mean by that is not just the expectations for what you're going to leave with, but set your expectations as to what your family will look like while you're learning this skill. And this is something that I failed to do when we were entering Costa Rica for me to learn Spanish. I knew that I was going to be in Spanish classes for several hours every day, 5 days a week. So Monday through Friday, I was in language school for about 6 hours. So I was away. That is the longest I've ever been away from my family on a consistent basis. And it was 5 days a week. So it was just a lot of me being gone. And so I did not enter that season with that properly set in my head to set the expectations about what our family was going to look like. So really just think, what is it going to look like when I'm doing this? So if I'm going to be gone this long, how's that going to affect the family and all that kind of stuff? But also set your expectations about what your skill level is going to be when you leave the school, when you leave the institute, when you leave the tutoring, whatever it is. At the end of fill in the blank weeks, you've been learning this skill. How do you think you're going to be at it? Because if you have in your brain that after 3 weeks of classes of something that you're going to be a master, you're probably going to be disappointed. And so just really set yourself up well to go, hey, you know what? I'm only going to take 3 weeks of classes and I only go twice a week. That's six exposures to something, right? Well, that's not enough to make me an expert. That's not even enough to make me in the advanced level, most likely, depending on what it is. So thinking back to the one cooking class that we took in Martin and Stoyanka's birth country, there is no way I left that class thinking, oh, great, now I can cook this nation's food with whatever I want, right? I'm good to go now. No. That's not how it was. Not even kind of. But I had to set my expectations well on that. The second tip that I'm going to give you is figure out what your schedule is going to look like, because this is going to help you with setting those expectations properly as well. And for us, the way that this played out was when we got to Costa Rica, I hadn't set the expectations properly in my mind, and I didn't figure out what our schedule was going to look like. And so then it was probably after 3 to 4 weeks of me being in language school full time, like I said, about 6 hours a day, I got hit with this like sadness. And it took me a while to figure out what it was. And you can think I'm a horrible person if you want, or maybe you're going to connect with this and you're going to say, wow, like I'm just like you. But I came in just thinking, oh, yes, I'm going to be gone, but school's going to look the same. Like I was very naive about it. And I really just thought school was going to look the same, that everything was going to be very similar. It's just I was going to also be learning Spanish. And that's not how it was at all. And school was very hard, like, because my kids are homeschooled. And so doing school with them was very hard. That whole year, it was really, really hard. But those first few weeks was especially hard. And also just not being with them was really hard. And it was about that 4-week zone that it kind of hit me that I was experiencing this like odd form of depression, that I wasn't, that things had changed so much. But also on top of this, and this is where you might think I'm a horrible person, things were okay. And I was like, how can things be so different, but yet like nothing is, besides the fact that maybe school wasn't going exactly how I wanted it to go with the kids, nothing was falling apart. Like no one was having any major meltdowns. Eric's work was going well. Me and Eric's marriage was good. My relationship with the kids were good. I was like, how can it be that I feel so needed in this house, but yet I leave for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and everything is still okay? Like, am I as needed as I had myself built up in my head? And I do think that the ages of our kids definitely, for sure, 100% had something to do with that, because they were all very much older. We were reaching the point where they needed to be independent anyways. But like seeing that independence, I tend to be a helicopter mom. And so seeing that independence and like that forced independence that they were put into, it kind of shook me a little bit to see, hey, like, am I, and obviously, yes, I am just as needed as I thought I was. And no one should want their family to like go into a meltdown because they're not there all the time. But I'm just being real with you guys. But I think if I would have thought it through more, I would have been better prepared for that. So that's my second tip. Tip number 3, work out any changes that will set your family up for success in this season. So sometimes we need to do things that we wouldn't normally do, but for a season is what we're going to do. So, an example is our family had a cook. The whole time we were in Costa Rica, we had a cook. She came in 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and she cooked our dinner. And it was amazing because by the time I got home from language school, and then I did school with the kids, and then I did all my homework, and I did studying, I was dead. And there was no way that I would have been able to stop the homework, do dinner, and then have the motivation to go back to the homework. Like my homework just would have just got thrown to the side totally. But hiring a cook made it possible. So, is there anything that you're going to need to change in your family that you haven't had to do yet? So, an example might be do you need to change the time everyone wakes up or the time everyone goes to bed? Maybe that needs to be altered a little bit. Maybe other people need to start cooking. Maybe people need to start doing some of their own laundry. Maybe people need to increase chores around the house. Maybe your standard of cleanliness needs to come down a little bit. And I don't say live in a dirty house. I know some people have an extremely high level of cleanliness. And when you're in a busy season, you might have to just adjust that a little bit and say, hey, you know what? Usually I sweep the floors every single day because that's what I like to do. I like to sweep. I know people that sweep and mop every single day, and that's fine. But when you're in a super busy season, you might have to say, okay, that can't happen every day. It's going to happen 3 days a week, or it's going to happen 4 days a week, and just adjust it a little bit. And I'm not recommending you live in a dirty house or anything like that, but you know what I mean. You might just have to change your level of that high standard that you have for yourself because you are putting something else on your plate. Another thing that is really helpful, this might sound silly, is hiring a housekeeper or a cook. That can really, because that allows you to keep kind of that part of life going, but you don't have to really think about it anymore. And so yeah, so that can be really helpful. So, but think about, are there any changes that we are going to have to make just for this season? We're not saying that we're going to have we don't have a cook now in our house. It's back to me, and 3 of my kids cook once a week also. So that's really, really nice, but they need to learn how to cook. So the 3 olders each have a night and they cook. But they weren't doing that in Costa Rica, but now they are. And so just think about that. What do we need to change during this season with our family makeup that, hey, you know what? Usually maybe dad gets up and makes breakfast for everybody, but that needs to change just for this season while you're learning this skill. And that's okay. And then you just talk about it as a family and you say, hey, I know that this is normally how it is. Maybe it's like you have pizza night every Friday, but you're like, hey, you know what? For this season, we need to change pizza night to Saturday night, or we're going to have to nix pizza night or whatever. That's okay. Because on top of just living life now, in most situations, you're having to pay to learn this skill. And so some of those expenses might have to go away. You might have to say, maybe usually you do hire a cook when you get to most places. I know a lot of people do hire a cook or a housekeeper when they get to a lot of places. Maybe that this is going to be a time where you don't have a cook. And so people are going to have to start doing more chores or just whatever that looks like. But just have a conversation about, hey, here's what our family is going to look like just during these 3 months that we're here to learn this skill, or while mom is doing this, or while dad's doing this, or while brother's doing this, sister's doing this. I don't think, and this is like, we'll get to that later. I'm jumping to the end. So yeah, but think about that and talk about it as a family. Number 4, figure out if you need to take anything with you or if you can get it all there. So this is not so much language. This is things like a sport or an art or something like that. Definitely figure out, hey, what all can we get there and what do we need to bring with us? Because it can be a little bit stressful, especially if there's language barriers and you're trying to get very specific things. You're trying to get specific art supplies, or you're trying to get specific sports equipment, or fishing things, it can be a little bit stressful to walk into a store in a country that you don't speak the language and you're like, oh man, I just really hope that they have what I need. So figure out, and the place where you're learning should be able to give you a pretty good idea about that. But definitely figure that out. Hey, this is the stuff we're taking with us. This is the stuff we need to buy when we get there. And just make sure then you give yourself enough time to go shopping when you get to that location. So if you are going to go and you think you're going to need to go to multiple stores, I would not recommend landing like 2 days before the classes begin. Like give yourself several days so you can go to different stores and you can price check. And I just think that's the best. If you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. That would be, but my recommendation is definitely give yourself time to shop around if you need to buy stuff in that city. And then number 5 is kind of on the other end of this. So number 4 was figure out what to take with you when you first begin. Number 5 is when you finish learning this skill, have a plan for how you're going to get all of these things from this city to where you're going next or back to your passport country. So let's say you're in an art class or even harder still, a pottery class. And you're going to be in this pottery class for 6 months. What are you doing with all of these pieces of pottery that you're going to be making? And that can be something you ask the school before you even sign up to go. You can say, hey, you know what? I know that you're located in, we'll just go with Germany again. I know that you are located in Germany. I'm going to want to get all of this pottery that I make over to the United States or England or Canada or Australia or wherever you're listening right now. How would you recommend doing that? And how much do you think it will cost? Because guaranteed you won't be the only one that wants to take their products home with them, right? And so that way you'll know how much to budget a little bit every month, or maybe you're gonna have to pull from savings or just however you have to do it. So when the end time comes of this class, you can then ship your pottery back to wherever you're gonna wanna display it at, right? So just think about that. How are you gonna what are you gonna do with the skill you learn, like the physical things, right? Language is really easy because like I have papers. And so I took all my textbooks and the important papers, I pulled out, I hole punched them, and I put them in a three ring binder, and everything else got thrown away. So like I don't have much. Most of it's just in my head. Most of it's not even there. Most of it just stayed in San Jose with the teachers. But the stuff that I did acquire is in my head. But if you're doing something like art, you're going to have a product to take with you, right? If you are doing a sport and you have all this new sports equipment, what are you going to do with it? Is there a place you can donate it? Are you going to take it back because you're going to join a rugby club in the United States or Canada or whatever? But just think it through. Like at the end, I'm going to have this pile of stuff. What am I going to do with it? I don't think that is a reason to not learn a skill overseas whatsoever. I just think it's something to think about. And then number 6 is have a next step for what you're going to do with this skill. So if you're joining a chess, like let's say you go to India, you learn chess. Well, are you going to join a chess club? There's so many online chess clubs that you could join if you're a full-time digital nomad like I am. If you learn about wine, then you could figure out wine in different countries that you're headed to, and you could have that already set up. Like, hey, for the next 6 months, I want to go to these 6 countries or whatever, and I want to drink the wine there or just whatever. What about if you are learning how to make food in a certain country? What are you going to do with that skill? But whatever it is, I would recommend having a next step. So how this played out for my family is we were there for a year in San Jose. So after our year in San Jose, we came down to Costa Rica. We were there for a year. We came down to South America. And so we're currently in Argentina. We've been here for almost 2 months. We're about like a week shy, I think, on 2 months now. And then we're going to go over to Chile for a little bit. And the reason we did it is not because we love South America, although it's growing on us. In Argentina, it's nice. Very, very different. I'm excited to do some podcasts about Argentina because it's unique. But the main reason we came here is so that I could continue speaking Spanish. That's it. That was our next step, was we're going to utilize the fact that I can speak this language versus go back over to England, go back over to somewhere in Europe, go over to Africa. No, like we're going to force ourselves to stay in Spanish speaking countries so that I can continue to use what I learned. And so you just have to think, what's going to be the next step for you? If you're going to get scuba certified, I would encourage you to have a next step with that. Are you going to go somewhere else and go on a scuba trip? Are you going to go somewhere else and get a different certification? What are you going to do with it? If you're doing art, well, then what's your plan? Are you going to keep traveling with art things? Are you going to take another class in another country? Just have something set up just so you don't. It's just like, it's this idea of you don't want to just walk away and then say, oh yeah, well, I did 3 months here learning this. While I don't think there's anything wrong with that, I do think that that is a perfect recipe for regret. And I think trying to minimize the regret we have in our life is best. And so thinking, okay, here's what I just learned how to do, and here's how I'm going to utilize it next. So we know that we're headed to England in December. We already have our tickets. We're very excited. And that's an English speaking country. And so I am already trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to keep Spanish going while I'm in an English speaking country? So just this kind of stuff, right? How are you going to continue this skill? Because when you leave an institution or a tutor or whatever, and you just invested so much time and probably money into learning this skill, if you just drop it, there is the potential that in 3 years, 5 years, whatever, you look back and you go, oh, I wish I would have kept that up. So just plan to have a next step, because I do think it's going to eliminate any regret that it might cause you later in life. And then number 7, this is my last one. Don't feel guilty. It is okay for your family to go somewhere and to live in a city for several months potentially, just for one person to learn something. I think it's really easy to say, oh, well, we don't want to spend that long at one place just for that person. Well, what if that person is going to really use that skill in their life? What if this is the time that really cements it, that yes, this is a pivotal moment in one of your kids' lives, or your husband's life, or your life, or your wife's life, or just whatever. And don't feel guilty about that. So at one point when we were in Costa Rica, Eric made a comment about how he was tired of Latin America. And that's not to say that we don't love Latin America. Like, please don't read into that whatsoever. He just said it. And I agreed with him. I said, I know. I love Central America, but we spent so much time in Peru, and then we were in Mexico, and then we were in 2 countries in Central America. And we spent a lot of time in Central and South America now. And so what he meant by that was, I'm ready for something new. Like, it's not that I'm sick of this. It's not that I don't like this. I'm just ready for something new, because after a while, everything starts to feel the same. And I said, I know, me too. And I had to stop myself from feeling guilty, like it's my fault we're here. It's my fault we're in Costa Rica. It's my fault we're in a place with tile floors and no air conditioning, no heating, because that's how Central America is most of the time. Like, not all the places, but it's normal, right, for Central and South America to not really have air conditioning. If you live in a place like San Jose, Costa Rica, the weather is exactly the same all the year round. So you don't need air conditioning. You don't need heating. If you get cold, put on a sweater. If you get hot, turn a fan on. Like, that's the logic. And so it would have been really easy for me to go, it's my fault we're here. But a few things. One, that doesn't help anybody. Like, feeling guilty about something is not. And 2, you have to understand that skill learning is an important part of growing and developing. So whether it's you, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your kids, it's so vital in life to learn skills. So please don't feel guilty. Let's say you have 3 kids. Okay, we'll just use my family as an example. We have 4 kids. If we were to go to a city for just one of my kids to learn a skill, I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I'm going to say, no, it's their time. This is something that they truly believe that they need, that they're going to be using in their life. And I'm going to release that guilt, right? So please, please, please don't feel guilty about learning a skill or someone in your family learning a skill. And that's the reason that you're at a place. And I know that sounds silly, but I've talked to so many families that were with me at language school or that have been other places. And there's this odd type of guilt connected to it because it's like, oh, we're stuck here. And it's like, well, yeah, you're stuck here in the sense of like you're not moving right now, but don't let that keep you from enjoying the time and just enjoying the fact that you're learning a new skill. So those are my 7 tips. I hope that they're helpful to you. And like I said, they all come from real life. We just finished up a big season of a skill learning time at a place. And yeah, it was a lot. So I hope it is helpful. If you have any thoughts about this, if you have anything to add, if you have just anything, shoot me an email. It's down there in the show notes. Just click on it. And I would love to hear your thoughts about this. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you got something valuable out of this episode. And as always, I hope you continue to travel joyfully.